So welcome everyone to this session. Just going to let people come in and join us. I have no idea how many people are going to show up, but it's looking promising, which is good. So let me say a little bit about what's going to happen in the session, and then we'll get into it. So really, the primary purpose of this session is to give some space to questions, reflections that have come up from this week's season of In Therapy. I'm very mindful that we've put out some very impactful content, and it just felt important to have some space to, I should probably turn off my WhatsApp, to have some space to just be in that a little bit together to answer questions that people have got. And then as I was talking with the team and talking with Paul about the fact that we were going to do this, Paul was keen to join us for this exploration. So I'm going to talk a little bit at the start, and then I'm going to say a few words about some things we have coming up. And then Paul is going to join us and is really happy to answer questions that that people have as well. I think what's nice at the start, it's nice to get a sense of where people are in the world. So maybe you can just post in the chat your either city or country. I need to enable the chat. I get this wrong every time. So let me just... Okay. All right. Chat is enabled. So yeah, if you want to post in the chat whereabouts in the world you're joining us from for this session. So we've got Brighton, Swindon, Cambridge in the UK. We've got Finland, Boston, Massachusetts, Birmingham, Coventry, Worcestershire, Oregon, Johannesburg, South Africa, Sweden, London, Canada, San Francisco, Chennai in India, Shropshire, Croatia, San Francisco again, Gosport, New England, Midlands, Colorado. So quite a lot of those are just coming to host and panelists, which is fine, but no one sees those. So south of France, Massachusetts, Netherlands. So I always love how global our audience is, and I love the fact that we get to someone's saying not far from our office in London. There we go. That's very cool. And obviously Canada as well. So yeah, it always touches and impacts me how global an audience that we have, and also that we can do something as raw and intimate as particularly this series that we made with Paul, where it's Paul and myself and Oliver and Jeremiah in the production team, and then sometimes one extra person going on this super vulnerable journey, and then that gets to be seen by thousands of people. It's a really strange kind of transition from intimacy to this very kind of wide and broad sharing. I wanted to say a few words as well around some of the evolutions and changes with this series, because for those of you that have been following In Therapy from the start, for about the last 3.5 years, we've been filming a range of different people's therapeutic journeys. And if you go back on the channel, you can see some of the history and some of the iterations of we've been sort of finding our way within that. Paul's is the first story where we filmed from beginning to end before we started editing. And we did this for a few reasons. One of the reasons was we decided to move away from just filming the sort of moment by moment, step by step of therapy, to instead focusing on the key moments and themes and reflections. The recognition that hopefully that then lands more impactfully, and therefore in a way is more powerful than being overloaded by lots of pieces that are happening along the way. And so in a way, letting the story drive the editing rather than trying to pack everything into a relatively short period of time. We also felt it was interesting in Paul's story, and Paul and I will get into this, I'm sure, together in a little bit, but we also, Oliver and I particularly felt as we got into the story, I felt that therapeutically, at some of the key moments, what was needed was not just Paul and I sat in 2 chairs in a therapy room together. What was needed to get out of that room. And it was an interesting part of the reason why we ended up in the woods was that the beady-eyed amongst you will notice that when we come back after the woods, we're in a different studio. So we were moving offices and we literally had nowhere to film. And it was spring and I was like, well, and it felt like the thing that was needed to get out and to have more space to be able to let things move. And so some of this series we went in knowing we were going to change how we were doing things, but a lot of it emerged as we were going through the series. And particularly as the trust built between Paul and I, it also felt that there was a potential to be able to be a little bit more creative in the way that we were working. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of that as we come to it. So to say a few words about how you can ask questions, if you're on a desktop, you'll see below below the video of me, there's a little button that says Q&A. So if you press Q&A, you'll be able to write questions in there. That will keep questions anonymous. And so if you want to ask questions, but you don't want people to know your name, I won't read out your name. It also means that as the chat moves, you don't have to sort of scroll back and find questions. We will keep an eye on the chat, but I think it's easier if we use the Q&A function. If you're joining on a mobile, you might need to go to the 3 buttons at the bottom where it says more, and you can click on that, and then you can find your way to the Q&A function there as well. So really happy to answer questions about, I guess, the production of the series, questions about the themes in the series. If there's things that you found yourself reflecting on and found yourself sort of wanting to know more about, I'm really happy to answer questions about that. Paul's also happy, of course, to answer questions. We'll talk a bit about, in a minute, Paul's journey to finding the series, and also we'll talk a bit about his journey since we finished filming. I know people have been wondering how he's doing at this point now. So before we come to that, I have a couple of announcements. I was going to do these at the end, and I was just talking to Paul, and he told me that I should do them now. So this is Paul's fault. So you will have noticed in the email which came out with this link that I've just launched the launch of, if that makes sense, a brand new program, which is called the Awakening Program, which at the core of it is a 3-day in-person event, either in London or New York, also with the option for live stream if you're not able to travel for either kind of energy reasons, physical health reasons, or just kind of distances and so on. Someone's just asking if you can invite other people to the webinar. Yep, you can share the link with other people. That's fine. So I'm going to post in the chat the link for the Awakening Program. I will talk more about it a bit later. I will also answer questions about it if we have them a bit later as well. But really, if you want to have the opportunity to go deeper into a therapeutic journey working with me, this program is the best way to be able to do that. I also am going to post a link to something called mentorship, which is an opportunity to work in the same way what Paul did, but without the cameras, working with me one-on-one directly, but also having access to all of my historical programs and to have access to all of the programs coming up in the next year, both the Awakening Program and also a 5-day in-person residential. So I'm going to post those links there. We can come back to questions on that a little bit later. Okay, let me bring Paul. Bear with me. Hey, Paul.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I can hear you. I just see a very glamorous photo of you at the moment. There we go.
Yeah, that was in the garage on my indoor bike.
So it's probably interesting for people that where you're sat is where you exactly with the same background and the guitar where you filmed your video before you came in. So I'm just going to say a few words before Paul kind of comes in a little bit. So Paul Well, so this week, actually, Tuesday, the second day of we were releasing episodes, was the 1 year anniversary of Zoe's passing. And to commemorate that, and also in a way for Paul to have somewhere to put his focus, Paul, or maybe Paul, you want to tell everyone what you did, and I'm going to post a link to it.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, it was back in back end of last year. And it's funny, I've got my journal here, and I remember writing in that journal back in the 28th of February. Today I will try and function normally, and I want to be better. And I remember walking out of my house, and you kindly read out part of Zoe's letter where it said that, you know, if anyone can take a shit situation and turning it into something worth fighting for, that's my dad. And I was literally running that through my brain as I was walking the dog as a mantra. And that was the beginning of me sort of coming from the very lowest point and making a decision. And I was thinking while I was walking, what can I do to give myself some focus to get out of this mire, to get out of this really dark place I was in. And I thought, well, Zoe's life was fraught with mental health issues from the time she came out as Zoe, because she used to be called Harry before that. And she came out in Canterbury, where she lived, and she was at uni. And that was her first attempt at suicide. And she did get her life together towards the end, and she got herself a job as a software engineer. She'd self-taught software engineer in 2020 during lockdown. She sat in my dining room and taught herself to code. And I was so proud of her. And she got herself a job over in Reading, and she got herself a flat, and she moved in that flat. And that was the flat where she passed away. She felt very comfortable there. And so I thought, well, I'm a keen cyclist, and I need to keep myself fit. I need to get myself back on the bike, because I hadn't ridden the bike for ages. And so I started documenting that journey of saying, okay, today I'm going to do 10K. So the first day after that, on the 29th, I went out and rode 10K. And I thought, well, what better way to, as a I don't know what word I would describe, but of stating that I'm going to do this for Zoe, was to ride from Canterbury to Reading. So those who don't know the distance between the two, it's 128 miles. And I'm going to do it in one hit. I'm not going to do it in 2 days, 3 days. It's going to be just one hit. And so that was my journey, really, to get myself back to fitness, because I am very fit cyclist. I've cycled to Paris before, London to Paris in 24 hours. So I'm an avid fitness freak. So this was a way to get me back to fitness, to commemorate her memory on the anniversary of her death. And so 7 o'clock on Tuesday, we set off. We went past your office, as you know.
I'll tell that story in a minute. Yeah,
along the canals, and it's all in aid, because there was another thing to this as well. Which charity do I attach this to? Because I wanted to do it for charity, and I decided to do it for Papyrus, which is the prevention of suicide in younger people. And they do a great job, and that's something that's very dear to my heart. Yeah, because obviously deeply affected by it. And we've raised about 3,600 quid so far, and I've got a target in my head of 5,000.
I've posted the link in the chat, so people have been impacted by the story and they want to support it. Even £5, £10, whatever would be great. So the link
that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. But that's how that came about on her Memorial Day of Tuesday. So, and it kept my mind off of her, you know, the negative. And I had a little tear when I finished at Reading. But it was a massive achievement.
So Paul and his wife came to the office on Monday night, and we'd sent Paul on, I think, the Friday or the Saturday. Oliver was at the office until gone midnight on Friday night editing my plans. I was in bed by the time he was sending me the episodes. So we sent Paul the first two episodes, I think, on Friday night, Saturday, and then Paul and his wife came to the office on Monday evening, and we screened episodes 3 and 4, which I felt would just be nice to do in person. My wife was also there as well. And then Paul said he was doing this cycle, and so it was going to come past the office. And unfortunately, the hour window he was coming past, I was already pre-booked in a live interview that I couldn't get out of. So Oliver and the team decided to go down and be on the canal and kind of, you know, give Paul some celebration. We got the wrong moment, and Paul and Oliver went wild celebrating for the wrong person, and a poor cyclist was quite distressed, I think, by someone going "Yay!" in their face. And then, of course, they then went back into the office, and about 2 minutes later, Paul, I think you went past, and
that's right.
Oliver disgraced himself and embarrassed himself. There we are. Do you want to say, Paul, a few words? So, firstly, fundraisers there, please do support it. Do you want to say, Paul, a few words about how you found? Well, let me say about how we find people, and then maybe you can say a few words about how you found series. Yeah. Oliver's just messaged me saying thanks for throwing me under the bus. Very well. So one of the real challenges for us with this series is finding the right people. And what I mean by the right people is finding people that want to do it for the right reason. And the right reason for us is not someone, although I completely understand the motivation, that is not able, for example, to afford therapy and things. I'll pay with my story to get access to therapy, because although I want to help as many people as we can, that's in a way us exploiting someone's vulnerability to come into it. And then there are people that apply because they want to be on camera. And again, I get that, but that's obviously not the heart of what we're trying to do here. So it's really finding people with the right motivation. It's then also finding people who have stories that feel like the right connection for the story. So there are stories that come in that are great, but we feel we've already told that story in therapy before. And so it's trying to find stories that are fresh. And it's also really finding someone is at that moment where I feel and the team feel they're really ready to do the work. And we've all had points in our lives where we think, oh, I need to sort these, I need to change. But that's different to those moments when there's that real sense of urgency and commitment. And so 2 or 3 seasons back, we decided to start using a casting person to get the net wider and to give us a broader reach of potential people. And so Matt, who did the casting on this series, who did an amazing job and a hard job. In 5 weeks, I think he generated about I think it was about 60 people that were interested, and I think about a dozen or 15 or so that came to video application. But Paul, do you want to say a few words about how Matt connected with you? Because I think that was quite an interesting little story.
Yeah, so when I made that decision the back end of last year, I slowly started documenting what I was going to be doing. And I'm a great believer in accountability. So in order for me to start riding my bike, to do the ride, I was posting on Instagram and Facebook saying I'm doing this ride, because most people by that stage knew that I'd lost my daughter. And so I thought, if I post something out, it's going to make me more accountable to go and ride. So I started off with a 10K ride, which I did 25 that day. And I always hashtagged for some reason. I don't know what. I don't normally hashtag, and I don't really normally get too involved with social media. But I was hashtagging grief, loss, mental health, and then I got in my DM message via Instagram. I got a message from Matt saying that they're doing this therapy, and would I be interested? And I said to him when we started chatting, why did you pick me? He said, because he was using the hashtag, loss, grief, and everything. And he picked it up my thread, and he was reading the thread, and he just said, look, he approached it. And there are times in your life when things are just everything's right. I was at that point, I'd already made that decision that I wanted to get back. And this is a slow process. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. The decision was made, but this didn't happen overnight. It took some time. And then this must have been early February. And I said, okay, fair enough. And he said, would you do a video for an application? And that's the video I shot you. I didn't edit it. I just sent it off. I just shot it and sent it off. And I even thought to myself, this is a complete waste of time. I'd probably never hear back from him or something. And I think I told you, all the way through this, I just didn't think it was going to happen. I just think, oh, well, we're going to do this and you'll probably bin it or something. That was me in a critic.
We'll come back to that in a minute, yeah.
But he was very, very good, Matt. And we had quite a few calls before I got to speak to Oliver, then yourself. But it was it was an easy process, but I was ready. I needed, because I'm quite a broad breadth of experience in personal development and NLP and certain other things that I've done. And I think I said on the video, I could do some techniques and change the way I felt, but I didn't want to. I needed to go through that process, and I needed someone, and this is really important, I needed someone who was strong enough to say, look, Paul, you need to do this. I'm not gonna allow you to take the control the narrative, because any therapy I had before, I'd always control the narrative. And so when he said to me your name, I looked through on your YouTube account, and I thought, I think this guy can help me. I think, there was a sense that you was the right person to be able to guide me through this and not take no bullshit from me, because trust me, I can give some bullshit.
So it was interesting. So that video came in, and Matt sent it. So we have a kind of internal group of Oliver, Jeremiah, my assistant Anna, and I think that's just us. And so I've been down filming in the studio, and I came back up to my office and walked past my Anna's office, which is next to my office, and she says, "Have you seen the application?" I was like, "I've been busy working." She says, I had to go and walk around the block afterwards. She was like, it really hit me. And so of course we watched it, and I remember thinking that obviously I knew at that point there's still quite a few steps to go through. So there's Oliver, the conversation with Oliver, then the psych assessment with Dr. Terry's. There's a kind of series of things that has to happen. But I remember thinking, not only is this what we're looking for, but I don't, this may sound slightly grandiose, I don't mean it that way, but I also remember thinking, this is one of those cases that I feel like I can impact in a way that I think a lot of therapists probably can't impact, because I realized that one of the things that mattered to you was someone that had gone to those dark places themselves, and someone that could meet you and hold you in those places. And so I've never experienced what you experience, and of course I deeply hope I never will experience that, but I do know what it is like to go to those very dark places in yourself. And in a way, there was it's hard to find the right word here, because this could sound really strange, but in a way there was a sort of excitement in me that I knew that if we got through the first session, and I'll come back to that in a second, I knew that we would do some really, really powerful work together, because I knew that you didn't want bullshit. And so we didn't, I knew that where you needed to go was the place where it was going to happen. But I remember saying to Oliver, I remember saying before the first session, how are you feeling about it? And I was like, well, basically the outcome of this session is Paul comes out and realizes he's not in control. I said, I think I even might have gone far as to say, I might have to slap him around a little bit just to make sure that he knows. And so it was funny when we had that moment. I remember really well that moment in the session, which obviously Oliver pulled out in the edit, where I said, we were talking about your inner child. I don't think he's the problem. I think you're the problem. And I think I said it with a little bit of a cheek in my face, but I also, at the moment, I was like, I remember thinking, this is it. How Paul responds to this is going to define everything. Because if Paul bats me back or he defends too much, then this is going to be tricky. But then the way that you sort of laughed and you sort of took it on, I remember thinking, we're on.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that was probably the moment where I realised that, I yeah, I allowed you that space, and you called me out, and not many. I think Vet said to you the other day, my wife said to you the other day, not many people call me out. Not many people can get the better of me. So yeah. We'll go into that a bit more. I'm sure.
I want to remind people there's a few questions come in. I'm going to hold those for a minute, but also let people know if they want to ask questions. There's a bunch of people that have joined since we started. That if you click on the Q&A function below the video, or if you're on mobile, you go to the three dots where it says more, and then you'll get to the Q&A function. Feel free to post questions for Paul and I. They will be anonymous, so I won't read your name out, and we'll come to those in a little bit. But before we do that, I think, Paul, particularly the piece in the 4 episodes that I've certainly had the most comments about from other people, and sharing it with a few trusted people before we screened it, was the session we did together in the woods. And that people can't see Paul's face now because the camera's on me, but I think that was about 2 hours that we filmed for, that then edited down to probably about 15-20 minutes. But the thing that people have most commented on to me was the trust that was there between us, and the way that you let me push you to places that were obviously very uncomfortable to go to. And I know that people would be keen to hear from you about what that was like for you, and what helped you go there, what was difficult about that, just to kind of hear your reflection a bit on that session.
Yeah, I suppose the overriding thing for me was, I knew you had to take me there. I knew that you was going to push me. I trusted you from the start. I said in the episode, I was a bit apprehensive about that day. I wasn't looking forward to seeing you, that's for sure. But I knew this. There's a part of me, that child, that pushes back and can get very aggressive. And it's funny because when I was a kid at school, that was the overriding theme from my teachers. I was aggressive and immature, and you could see that in that filming, how immature I was getting. I was very dismissive, very non-compliant, as you put. But all the time I was aware, I've got to get to that point to break that cycle. Does that make sense? It's like if I didn't break the cycle, then I was still caged effectively, because that's what it felt like. I was caged, and you just pulled the bars out, and then once you got through, that was it. I was just a quivering mess. But it wasn't a nice place to be. I can assure you, it wasn't a nice place to be. And looking back at it and watching it back, that anger, kicking the tree and swearing, and it was really tough, really tough. But I'm so glad I went through it.
What do you think helped you go through it? Like, if someone's watching this that knows that part of the work they need to do is to start to make space for and move those feelings, but like you've done, and like many of us have done, and like I'd done for many years before, learning to go to those places, do everything they can to avoid going there. What do you think helped? Like, what made it possible to go there, do you think?
I think 2 things: the willingness to go there, i.e. the fact that I knew you was going to take me there, and secondly, having someone you can trust to stop you from running from it. If that makes sense, because it's I've been close, like, many times to that point, but not gone through the other side, not got rid of them bars. So it would just be like a caged animal. But it's that willingness to surrender to it effectively, and say, no, this has got to happen. And everything in life, I suppose, is a choice, isn't it? Right? You've got to make a choice, and that choice was, I can either waste this fucking opportunity that you've given me because it was an opportunity that was presented to me at the right time, or waste it. And I wasn't prepared to waste it. No, I was at that place. I knew it was that important to me. I had to do it. And so it shows in the filming, and people don't see the whole picture. There was a lot of, he was very patient with me. There was lots of times when there was, there was awkwardness, and I didn't want to go there, and you just kept pushing, gently pushing, patient, and it was that willingness to go there.
I was going to say, I think in a way what the film shows is the moments I push you, and actually what the film probably doesn't show is the moments that I let you have space, because it's less interesting. I'm not saying it's not necessarily less important, but like it's like that's a hard job to cut 2 hours down. And at some point, maybe we'll put out a much less edited version of that. Might be interesting of that session.
That would be,
but it's interesting, from my point of view, and I mentioned it in the voiceover in the episode, that it's that real balance of pushing to the point of driving the breakthrough, but not pushing so much that the person shuts down or runs away. There's an interesting moment that I wanted to comment on from a trauma perspective as well. So people, it's a clip of it's actually in the trailer when Paul starts running, and there's, if you watch it in episode 3, which it must be sort of, I don't know, 10 minutes from the end of episode 3 or something, there's a point where, so part of the trauma research, and particularly Peter Levine's work has spoken very elegantly to this, that as children, when we experience trauma, we can't fight or flight. So we can't fight with the people which are treating us in less than desirable ways, and we can't flight, we can't get away. And so what happens is we freeze. And one of the ways that in a way we survived childhood is we freeze and we shut down. But what that does is it traps in all that fight or flight energy. And so that my reflection on that moment when Paul runs is, it's the coming out of freeze, and it's that fight or flight energy then being freed up, and then that's actually part of the resolution of that energy gets to move. Although a few people have asked me, was I worried that you're just going to keep running? There was certainly a point with the crew where it was like, and it's sort of seeing the film that you run, and then I sort of go to sort of head off, because I was like, I'm figuring he's going to come round on that circle, but I wasn't sure if you were going to stop when you got to me or not. But I'm sort of,
I didn't have a clue what was going on. I just started running. I don't know what it was. I just started running, and I did a couple of times think, I want to get out of here. I did think that, this is no good, and I suppose that was my way of taking control of it. I suppose in a way, it's like, okay, all right, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound, and that was like me letting off a bit of steam, and you're right. It's probably, you broke through that. You're not trapped in with all that energy anymore. So it had to come out, but. Yeah, it was interesting, and there were times when there was a couple of comments, I think, in the comments section. Certainly one about, weren't you worried about me striking you? And I had no intention of striking you whatsoever. I did go like this. I'm not a violent person. I've not had any fights as in my adult life. So I'm not one for striking out at people. I would more likely to hurt myself, and I think I said that that would headbutting the tree or something of that nature would have been something I would have done, and he was acutely aware of that, as I explained to you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking with my wife after we had that screener Monday night. She was like, yeah, Paul never would have hit you. He's such an honourable man. that was her response. But in a way, it's like all I can remember is my nervous system didn't activate. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel like I didn't think you were going to. But I also, in a way, like there's a place that I go into when I'm working in that way where in a way, you say you're in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound as well. It's like, I said to the crew, I was like, I have no idea. Just make sure you've got spare batteries and spare SD cards, because I don't know how long this is going to go for. Like, I know where we need to get to, and I don't know if that's going to take 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, or we're going to be here when the sun goes down. Like, but we're, as long as Paul is willing, we're not leaving here until what needs to happen has happened.
I think also the other thing throughout all the episodes, that was probably the only time I was really aware of the cameras were right around me, because I remember telling them to fuck off. Because
yeah, what people don't know, it was actually the crew that Paul was telling to fuck off. Yeah,
because I was like, oh, every time, and I was walking away from you, and they're spinning around. Oh, for goodness sake! It was everywhere I went. They were there, and that was hard.
Well, it was also, as people will see in the film as well, part of my strategy was I was getting up in your face as well, and so you would walk away, and I'd walk around, and I'd block you, which was also part of the sort of energetic container that I was trying to build, that you could move around, but there was also an edge, and that I was going to hold that edge. That's part of building the safety, but it's also part of the boundary that can trigger that stuff. So we come to some of the questions. So just to make people aware, there's a few comments in the chat that I'll pick up, but also if you post in the Q&A, if you've got questions for me, questions for Paul. So the first question, someone says, I'd love to know how Paul is feeling and getting on following his therapy. So Paul, I think we filmed at Zoe's memorial in, was it late May, early June, something, maybe early June, something like that?
Well into June, I think it was. Yeah, okay. I think it was latter June, I think it was.
Okay, so that's what, July, or about 3.5 months ago. So do you want to share a little bit of how you've been since then?
I'm not going to say I feel great, because there's still days where I'm a little bit down, but I don't. There's a moment in episode 4 when I start talking about a letter to my mother. Before I even read it, there is a smile on my face. That tells me everything I need to know about that trauma from a child, that grieving process I never had. And reading that letter as her son, the man, not the little Paulie, was huge. I don't look at my past now as poor little kid who got stuck under the table, because even though I didn't use that analogy, it's only through our revealing the little child in me that I tell the story about that little kid under the table. But that little kid under the table has it's been set free now, and I don't look at my past and think, oh, I lost my mum, poor me, and it's not a sub story anymore. And so that is a massive shift. I said to you earlier, on the Memorial Day, I shed a tear when I got to her flat, but it didn't. I was down the crematorium the following day. There was no tears. I can deal with her grief a lot easier now. It's not as raw. It's not as it's softer. And this sums it up. Last Christmas, cancelled Christmas. I said I don't want any Christmas presents. The only Christmas present I got was this, which has got Zoe, Charlotte, and Vicky on, which is my 2 daughters and my granddaughter. And that's the only present I got. I wouldn't have anything. This year, I'm looking forward to Christmas. So if that in itself is huge, absolutely huge, so I'm a lot calmer. I'm not angry anymore. Even walking the dog down the road, I used to get cheesed off if he didn't go to the toilet on his last walk out at 9:30. I think, oh, just drag me out. What's the matter with your dog? I'm chilled, super chilled. So there's a lot of facets to this that come together. But I'm in a so much better place. And I equated it to a friend of mine, where I say that if you look at sections, this section over here is the darkest place you could be. So when you asked me, what about getting up in the morning. That's that place. Then there's this place in the middle where you're functioning in, and that's all I was doing, was functioning. And then you've got this part at the end where you're living again, and that's where I am. So I'm a lot better thanks to the work that you did with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's important to say that the goal here is not, as I know you know, Paul, I'm saying to the people watching, the goal here is not that Paul doesn't feel sadness and the heartbreak and the loss of Zoe. The goal here, in a way, is the opposite. The goal is that Paul can feel those feelings and emotions, because we don't heal by circumnavigating or trying to flip our way out of, or trying to get to another place. We heal by healing, by making space. And in a way, at the heart of what we did together was allowing the feelings. But in doing that, that healing then can happen. And it's not a binary place of in grief, not in grief. It's how we're in relationship with those feelings, which is also part of how Zoe lives within you. And it's not about trying to get rid of that. It's just having a different relationship with that.
And I knew some of the techniques and some of the things you did with me, I still use to this day, the little things, that we did, and I thought, I'll use that. Let's reevaluate that. So it's life changing, absolutely life changing. So
I'm going to pick a few quick ones that I'm going to answer. So one was, does this therapeutic approach use the IFS, the internal family systems model? So it has shared elements. This model was developed over the last 20 years, and IFS has sort of also had its I think maybe it has some slightly older origins, but there's also particularly had its fruition in those years. But I think both models have some similar underpinnings. So I'd say it's less of a we integrate IFS and more of therapeutic coaching, and IFS integrate some of the same underlying influences. And someone else saying, you aware of John Bradshaw and his work, Healing the Inner Child? Yes, aware of the work. And I tend not to use the words inner child, although in the work with Paul, we talked a lot about sort of child within, partly just because some of the popularization of inner child work is a little different to what it is the way that I tend to work. I tend to work with the inner child in a much more immediate way, like I was with Paul, around the relationship and the feelings and the emotions, and less about some models, which not so much John Bradshaw's work particularly, but some models where it's kind of an enabling of the inner child in ways that actually I think can cause a bit more confusion. Someone asks, who do you feel needs to see this, and how might you get it to them? Excuse the directness, bereavement counselor here. Our job was my job was to do the best I could. Paul was to show up the best he could. Oliver and Jeremiah's job was to make the best series we could. It's now on YouTube. It's everyone else's job to help us get this out to people, is what I would say. And so it's also, I'm not trying to abdicate, it's also our job, but please share this series with people. My hope is that this is something that will over time grow through word of mouth and people sharing it. And actually, Paul, Paul and I spoke briefly on the phone before we jumped on here. And Paul, you said something to me about if it could just help one person. Maybe you just want to say a couple of words on that.
Yeah, I was looking through the comments, and in fact, I'll just try and pull it up while we're talking. On session 4, and whoops, excuse me. And this is what it says, and this is what it's all about for me. Thank you, Paul, for showing me the other side of the coin. I've been sobbing since watching this last episode. I've been through a very dark time in my life. I had planned to commit suicide several years ago. It's not been easy carrying on, and I will say the thought still creeps in occasionally. Seeing what your daughter's suicide did to you has made me realize what it would do to my parents. I believe I can honestly say this now. After witnessing your pain, I will find another way to deal with my troubles. I will not put my family through the anguish you've endured. I am sorry you lost your baby girl. Your bravery and vulnerability is appreciated by me, and that really says it all for me, because that one person as a shift, then, you know, me being vulnerable on camera was worth every minute we spent together. Sorry.
I need to apologize, but I think it's, to me, it's sometimes in the most difficult moments that we have. And that's why I said to Paul when we were messaging back and forth last weekend, so that the final message from me in the film, which people recognize the background filmed here in the cabin at the end of my garden, it's about a 60-second piece. It took 2 hours, about 30 takes, because where I talk about how hope is something we find one step at a time, because to me, that message is so important that I think sometimes in our most difficult moments, we think because we don't feel hope in that moment, we think there isn't hope. And if I had, you know, in a way, I framed it as Paul's lesson. It's also in my message to people as well, that courage isn't that we don't feel afraid, and hope is not something that just turns up. Courage is something we find through stepping forward, and hope is something we discover along the way. And so if someone can watch this film that can be in a place they think there's no hope, and to realize that hope is something that can be discovered, that really means something. And I also know there's someone that shared, I'm just going to read out, mentioned a couple of times. So the question was, do either of you have any advice on how I can deal with the feelings of losing my young son this year to suicide? Do you recommend me to write a letter or go to the woods and shout and scream? He took his life in the woods. I can't get my head around it and deal with it, and have been bedbound with ME ever since. I've just joined your 3-month fatigue program to hopefully help me both you're my massive inspiration. So firstly, I'm really pleased this person's joined that program, because I know they're going to get a lot of help and support as part of that. So in a way, there's a lot of tools and also kind of one-on-one support this person I know is going to be getting, which is great. I don't know, Paul, if there's something if you could summarize the journey that you've been on here and to put into a couple of your key sort of reflections. I know there's lots of pieces to it, but is there anything you particularly want to say?
My thoughts are with him. But one of the first things I did, and Zoe went, was I was looking for something positive I could take from it. I was fortunate that she was very thorough with her passing, and she left me that letter and a few other things. But I was looking for something I could grasp and say, well, because how can you find something positive in when someone passes? I mean, it's a bizarre thing to think about, but whether it's something that you can take about the relationship that you had, or you know, memories, or something just to hold on to, because it's been ripped from you. And sometimes we have to try and fill that void with something that we can look back on and say, I remember things with Zoe, memories, that letter. I read that letter every 4, 5, 6 times a day for a month. But that's what I would say. Try and find something positive, something that you can cling to, because it's not easy. You know, you're going through it. I've been there. I know it's a not many people will know how you feel. Only someone who's been through it. And trying to make sense of it, trying to and try and ask yourself, or start asking. I don't know if you do. Don't ask questions you're not going to get answers to. And it's easy to go down that rabbit hole of why, or trying to find and piece together things that you're not going to find, because that's a definition of madness in a way, because you're trying to find things that you're going to get answers to. And I felt guilt when Zoe went, because I'd said to her that I could understand why she was going to go, and then I let her go back to her flat, and she did it. And then I realised that she was going to do it anyway. But I couldn't have stopped it. I could not have stopped what she was going to do. And so the last part is accepting something. How can you accept it in a way where, because again, this doesn't sound sort of normal, but trying to find some acceptance of what's gone on and how and the fact that that's what they wanted. It's not what you wanted. It's what they wanted.
You know,
I hope that helps.
I hope it does. I'm sure it will. And I can't know the experience that you both unfortunately know, but I do know the experience, another part of this person's experience with severe MECFS, that place of how can you accept something which is so painful, and how can you surrender to a God or a universe or a life, whatever it may be, that is causing such pain and suffering. And the definition in a way of acceptance is finding peace with something that you don't like. You don't have to find acceptance of something that you do like. In a way, acceptance is finding that peace even when it's not something that you like or you want, but there's a place of deep peace that also can come in that place of acceptance. But the journey to that is not a journey of avoidance and getting away from what we're feeling. It's a journey through what we're feeling. So I'm going to come back. There's another question someone's asking: how do you keep the boundaries of empathy? Like, sometimes it's so overwhelming and tend to get into the emotions of the client. So for me, and this is something we talk a lot about actually on our when we're training therapists on our therapeutic coaching practitioner training, that where is that balance of caring and empathy, but not at the end of every day in clinic coming away having taken on all the feelings and all the things that are happening there. And my realization many years ago was that, of course, I'm going to feel empathy in my heart for someone that I'm working with, but I'm at my most potent in being able to help that person when I don't get sucked into their feelings and emotions about it. And in a way, the question I'm asking myself is, how do I need to show up, and who do I need to be for this person to take this journey forwards? And some people, their issue is they need that place of softness and leaning in. And there are places where, of course, I was doing that with you, Paul. But what you actually needed was to feel someone that could meet you in your strength, that actually you could push up against and could hold the edges of that. And so that was the quality more that then was. And then in that place, I'm still feeling, but they're your feelings. They're not my feelings. And I can't fix you. I can't heal your feelings by feeling them. I can help you heal your feelings by providing what's needed in that moment. And so, although I find myself impacted, of course, working with people, I come out of a session like, the sessions that we were doing together, and I'd come out feeling impacted, but also energized, like feeling because also what I definitively don't do with people is just sit with them wallowing in their pain and suffering that doesn't go anywhere. I will hold people where they are, but I'm there because they want things to change and want things to be different. And so what I pick up on is the energy of the movement, not a kind of more traditional psychotherapeutic counseling model where you're just sitting in the wallowing of the pain, because that's draining. And my experience, that often isn't what people actually need. Someone else is also asking about homeworks, except that of writing the letter. So yeah, after most, I don't know, Paul, if you can remember many of these things, but after most sessions, there will be some sort of homework or reflection. Paul was also watching some of the videos of the reset program as we were going through as well. So we were backing up what we were doing in the sessions with that supplementary video material and exercises and so on. I don't know if there's anything particular that comes to your mind, Paul, of things you did outside the sessions that you found helpful.
Journaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my journal is just is it's full of entries, and that's just one. That's just a personal journal. I've got other things I've always been writing out, but I think the homework. I think the one I do remember well was he was asking me about how I dealt with things, what techniques or not techniques, what things I'd used in the past to get away from the pain. I can't remember how you phrased it, but distraction was one of my big ones. Avoiding and distraction being, I called it pressing the fuck it button, which would go down some seriously. I don't drink. I used to, and I used alcohol for many years to escape. Then when I didn't drink alcohol, then I'd be finding other things. The good thing is my escapism today, my distractions are good for me, not bad for me. So if you're riding my bike, I might go out for, a whole day on my bike or something. Or I've got a classic car in the garage. I'll be tinkering with that, or I'll be writing or something like that. But so I found the homework there quite interesting, and say journaling was another one, and vlogging. So doing the because that's something that Oliver was very encouraged me a great deal to say, look, just when you've had a session, then the following day just put out what you felt, or it doesn't matter, just send it through to me. It doesn't matter. I don't care what it is. And I sent lots through, and that helped because it reflected after the event. Because coming out, I think that first one, the very first session, I came out, and when you pulled me up and said, "I don't think it's his fault, it's yours," he's to blame, it's me. I realized that I had hope. There was hope, actually. If I'm in control of that, I'm putting him down, then there's hope that I can control it. The second one, there was, I remember coming back from that where we were talking about that little kid under the table and integrating him back into me, and seeing it and letting him out, and then the third one was the inner critic, where I realized how incessant it was. So all them things I was taking from that, I've written it down somewhere. I don't know where I've written it down. It's a shame I should have pulled it up. But every time I was writing down, this is what I got out of this session. This is what I got out of that session. This is what I've got. So I piece it together, because I do remember that after session 4. And then you hadn't said anything. You said it on the on the the edits, but we had a point at which Oliver turned around and said, "That's all well and good. We've done all this, this great stuff," and I was feeling quite euphoric, all plussed up. And he went, "We got to speak about Zoe." Oh fuck! Oh no! And then I remembered why I was really there for the first 4 weeks. It set me right up, and
Bless you.
so then I was, oh shit, no, I wasn't feeling good then. So there was lots of things that went on behind the scenes where I did a lot of reflection, and I think again it comes down to whatever you do, whether you go on, because that program you was talking about, the new program, the sort of thing I would jump at the chance, because that would be something that when you've got that immersion, if you're going to do something, you're going to go into it, get the most out of it, because if you don't get the most of it, you wasted that. And that's why I was very, very fastidious on making sure that I got something out of each session, or I reflected back on it, which is important.
I think part of it as well is that we always felt, so Oliver and Jeremiah and I used to say between sessions that we always felt that you knew that we were Team Paul, that our number one priority was you not the film, that was the, because although the film was in a way important, it was only ever going to be something worth watching if we kept you sort of front and center. But that also meant that I think you trusted us, but you were also willing to let us push you in the ways that needed to happen as well. And I think that was that was a big part of it. And then we're going to finish, I'm going to say a few words about the upcoming programs. Before I do that, I also just something that I thought was quite funny on Monday night was after we watched the film, and you said to your wife that because it had taken so long between finishing filming and putting it out that you thought, so tell people what you thought was going on.
I thought you'd binned it. I thought it was like, no, they don't like it. They thought it's crap. They're not going to put it out.
And of course, the opposite was true. This was like Oliver's Sistine Chapel. It was like kind of like endless late nights in the office crafting this. Because, and in a way, the delay was because it really, we felt, and I know particularly Oliver felt, because he's the person that drives the sort of the editing side of it, that you showed up so significantly that we had to match that in the story, like in the way that the film was made. It's like, it's like, you know, you didn't go half measure, so we weren't going to go half measure.
No. And before you go into anything else, I noticed in the comments that someone said about building rapport, and it's so important. And I want to touch on that because it's really important for people to understand this, because I think it is so evident, the trust between us. But you didn't build rapport. You built a bond, and bonds are built with trust. And you know, and I'm a great believer in that, because you should have rapport with everybody. You should have rapport with with the waitress in the restaurant, or the bin man, or anybody. It's a prerequisite to any communication. But a bond is built by trust, and even that first. Actually, I don't think it's his fault. It's not. You can't blame him. I blame you. That cheeky smile that you that grin, and I just knew then I could trust you. I knew I was in safe hands because there was a bond built, not rapport. And I think that's really important distinction.
You know, it's so funny you say that, Paul, because in the one of the first videos in our practitioner training, there's a session on rapport. So I go through, this is how you're supposed to build rapport. And I go, but I don't do any of that.
No.
I just be myself with people and tell them the truth. And it's like, and they'll either like it or they don't like it, you know. And there's something about, you know, it's kind of maybe a message to therapists out there, that I think so many therapists have an idea of who they need to be a good therapist. And of course, there have to be boundaries. There are things that are appropriate, things that aren't appropriate, and so on. But ultimately, people need to feel your heart, and they need to feel your truth. And I don't think I always get it right. In fact, you know, it's a little bit like a plane from London to New York. I'm a little bit off track the whole time when I'm working with someone. But I find the more truthful I am with people, when I'm not right, I get the correction, right? So I might have said that, and you might have been defensive, or you might have said, actually, it's not me, it's there, and we could go down a different path. But I needed to know we could spar together, and I needed to know that I could sort of push you, and you would push me, and we would, and that, you know, in a way that therapist and client build that bond between them. And it's the more the therapist shows up, the more it hopefully invites the client. But also, as you showed up, it goes back to what I was saying about the production team. And in a way, we were all, I think, sort of setting the bar between us of the, I felt, I think I said this to you at the memorial, that when I read Zoe's letter, which I read a few days after the first session, I really felt her. And of course, I've never of course met her, but I felt the presence. And because she wrote so beautifully and so eloquently and so articulately, and I could feel who she was in the words of the letter. I also felt, beyond the series, you know, we'd already had our first session together at this point, but I felt this extra sense, in a way, of it wasn't just you and I, it was also it was also she was there in that journey.
Yeah. And I think the word I would use is authentic. Yeah, your authenticity, my authenticity. I think we were both authentic this process, and I think that showed in the end production. I think because I've watched it plenty of times. I think the first one's up to 5,000. I think that's 5,000 my views.
4,999 of you. That's funny. That's funny. Is there anything else you want to say, Paul, in finishing?
Just thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm forever grateful, and if people are genuinely, this is not scripted. This is not. If anyone has a chance to go on what was the program called?
There's the Awakening program. Yeah,
Awakening program.
I've got it ready to. I've got it ready to go in the link. So I'm going to put it
honestly jump on it, because I think working with you, people see it. I mean, I can see your work, and it's like I say, you're authentic, and I think people will get a lot out of it. So yeah, it's important.
Thanks, Paul. Well, I've just shared in the chat, firstly, the link to Paul's fundraiser. So if you want to support the suicide prevention charity that Paul was cycling for, please do support that. Even just sometimes people think, oh, £5 won't make a difference. It does. So I want to, whatever someone feels they can give to that, please do support that. And then the next link you'll see there is the Awakening program. This is a brand new program. It's happening in London in February with a live stream option, and then New York in March with a live stream option. It's an opportunity to work with me in person. And what I've realized in recent time is, I've been very fortunate enough to be very successful with online programs that I reach many, many thousands of people. But the piece that is partly selfish, the piece that I most miss, but I also know the work that Paul and I did together wouldn't have been possible just working online. There's something about what happens coming together in person, or if people are on live stream, coming together in a collective field and space that we have together. So that's the link to the Awakening program. There's a discount if people register now. There are limited spaces, both the in-person and the live stream. There's a cap by the venue and then by the number of people we can support on the live stream, because there will be online support for that as well. So if you want to join us, please do register. There's also people been asking about sessions with me. The reality of sessions with me is that the only clients that I've taken on the last few years have been people that I've been filming and therapy with. I am taking on literally a handful more people, but it's in a more similar way to how I worked with Paul, which is a bit more intensive, but also people accessing all of my other programs and the Awakening program and the Emerge, which is a 5-day residential that's not been open for registration yet. So people want to work in that way. There's information on that. That is, it's going to be out of a lot of people's financial reach. I recognize that. The thing that I want to say is the money we generate from mentorship is what comes in and funds in therapy. And so people can imagine within therapy, with paying the salaries with Oliver, Jeremiah, with the studio and all of that, my commitment within therapy is that it's free to everyone on YouTube, the way we put it out there. But things like mentorship help us invest in and make that happen. And so what I love about it is those that can afford that can have that access, but by doing that, they're actually supporting this work coming out to a lot more people. So there'll be information coming out via email on those bits as well.
Whereabouts are you doing the Awakening program? Whereabouts?
So London, and then
London.
Yeah, London.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
if you're doing it, I might pop along at lunchtime or something like that.
That would be cool. Well, maybe we can do a little live Q&A, and people can get to meet you in person if you want to.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. Yeah.
That would be really cool. That'd be really cool.
Right.
Someone's just put in the chat. I love it. I'm going to use it as my final piece. Healing is not. This is from Enako. Healing is not a solo act. Together we are stronger, no matter where we are. That's great.
Oh, wonderful.
That's a good ending.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Paul, bless you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for coming on this journey together, and thank you also for being so willing to come on this session this afternoon as well. I think it's really, I know it's impacted some people, and I really appreciate you being willing to.
Well, I think hopefully people can see that, how far I've come. So that's important to me. I think that people see that.
Bless you.
Cool.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, people, for joining, and we'll look forward to talking in the future.
Thank you very much. Good night.